Welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. Our guest today is Erica Poseley, a Rider Biomechanics expert with a diploma in Equitation Science from Equitation Science International. I first met Erica in 2017, and while we only scratched the surface of Rider Biomechanics in our time together, it was very impactful for me. At the time, I had only been exposed to a traditional hunter-jumper equitation style, and looking back, it is easy to see that those clinics were big corner turners for me. Erica's journey to becoming an expert in these fields began long before her work in Rider Biomechanics and Equitation Science. Erica has been riding since she was very young, but never had a formal riding lesson until she graduated from UCLA with a degree in philosophy and moved to Maui, Hawaii. There she started dressage lessons and bought her first horse after seeing a book in the Lahaina Library entitled My Horses, My Teachers by Podhajsky, the former head of the Spanish riding school. She was mesmerized by the beauty of the riders and the horses, and this love of correct dressage training and beautiful posture still motivates her daily to ride correctly and teach others to uphold this high standard of excellence. Fast forward, and Erica moved to California to pursue her dreams of becoming a professional trainer. She apprenticed with the late Liz Searle and Jeff Moore, and also got to ride with the Baron von Blixen-Finnicke, an Olympic gold medalist, who was a great influencer in how Erica thinks of training and posture. Fast forward a bit more, and Erica started working with another wonderful teacher, Sandy Howard, who then introduced her to Mary Wanless. Erica has been studying with Mary for the last 30 years and is an accredited Ride With Your Mind coach. Needless to say, Mary has been a huge influence in her knowledge of rider biomechanics. Through Mary and her top coach, Allie Wakelin, Erica heard about the work of Dr. Andrew McLean. Dr. McLean is one of the founding fathers of equitation science. Equitation science is the application of scientific principles, particularly learning theory, to understand and improve interactions between horses and humans. In 2019, Erica earned her diploma in equitation science from Equitation Science International, and since then she's been passionate about sharing this transformative knowledge with riders and coaches. What makes Erica's approach unique is how she combines the science of how horses learn with the biomechanics of effective riding, creating a powerful foundation for clear, humane communication between horse and rider. With that, let's dive into the art and science of clear communication with our horses with Erica Poseley of GotSeat.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Erica.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with hearing a little bit about how you got started with horses as a child.
Well, it's quite an interesting story because I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the city, and the only place I ever saw horses was at the racetrack, which my father would take me with him because he liked gambling, and I probably started around 5 or 6 or maybe younger, I don't know, and I fell in love. I mean, all I wanted was to go to the racetrack and go to the paddocks and see the horses. And I even I rode my couch, and I would make I remember this, making little stirrups out of rope for riding my couch. And I would imagine riding, but I never was on a horse, but I would imagine jumping and riding, almost like I was reincarnated and I wanted to be a rider. And then when I was 12, I had a terrible tragedy. My mother died. And if I probably hadn't been able to be around horses, who knows what, but I had to ride. And I would go to one barn and just hang out, and they would let me hold the horse, and I would be thrilled. And I didn't get to ride. And eventually I got to do trail riding. But in order to do it, I had to steal pop bottles off of people's porches. So I had a partner in crime, and I would go at night. Well, I was kind of wild, and I would go at night and go on the porches with my friend, and we would steal pop bottles, and then we would turn them in, and you could get like 5 cents or 10 cents until I got $2, and I could go on this hour trail ride. And I didn't know how to ride. I just You just stayed on. That's all you did. And there was no instruction. And my poor friend, he
Hmm.
didn't really like it, but he just, I made him. And then we would hitchhike to this place. And my dad finally caught me doing it, and I was grounded. But it's just, I was driven to ride horses, and I would do it any way I could. And then when I got older, I moved to Los Angeles, and I rode polo ponies. I didn't know how to ride, literally. I never had a lesson. And they would let us ride these polo ponies, and we would pony the polo ponies and go up in the Santa Monica Mountains. I don't know how I did it because, you just learn to sit on a horse somehow. So that was my initial riding with when I was
Hmm.
young and I never had a lesson until I moved to Hawaii. And then here's the strangest part: I was a surfer. I was avid surfer, and after I graduated from college, I moved to Maui, and I was into surfing. And I went to the library in Lahaina, and I found this book called "My Horses, My Teachers" by Podhajsky. And it's like somebody hit me over the head, and I saw these beautiful riders and the horses, and I was like mesmerized. And I asked around, and I found a dressage teacher, and that's how I started my career in riding horses, doing dressage. And the woman worked for this very rich lady that would bring in clinicians, and that's how I got my start with Jeff Moore and Liz Cyril. They were clinicians, and they came, and I would get lunch, and I started actually working on my seat and getting good dressage lessons. So crazy story, huh?
Yeah. Would you say that all those years, all those years you spent riding without instruction, do you feel like there was some kind of benefit in you obviously are forced to develop some kind of feel, otherwise you wouldn't have made it. You know? So do you feel like there was some kind of benefit in having that before the technical instruction, or do you feel like, oh, I wish I would have gotten that from day one? How do you feel about that?
That's a great question. I think, thinking back on it, it might have been a good thing that I didn't have formal instruction. I mean, you can look at it both ways. Now that I know so much about the rider's seat, it would have been great to have all the seat lessons at 8 years old. But I think having that natural, I probably had some kind of natural ability, or you're right, I wouldn't be around right now, probably. And the freedom, as a child to be around horses and go fast and ride bareback. And I think that there's something to be said about that. Like Dr. McLean, which we'll talk about later, he grew up in Tasmania, and he did the same. He got to ride and just ride free as a kid. And so I think there's probably some pluses to just being a kid on a horse, and not having to, you know, there's pluses and minuses about both.
Yeah. Definitely. Um, Now, so your instruction began there in Maui. Let's go from there. What happened next?
Well, then I decided, I was married at the time. Then anyway, it ended that marriage, and I wanted to be a horse trainer. And the people that I was riding with, Liz Cyril and Jeff Moore, they were in California, and so I moved and worked for them. And it was a fabulous time because they were breeding Dutch warmblood horses, and they wanted a body to be the person on the little baby horses. They weren't little, by the way; they were huge. And but I was happy to uh, learn. So I spent a couple years there, working for them as a working student, maybe not that long. And I got to be meet and be educated. They were very much into education. They brought over tons of good people, and they especially brought over a man called the Baron von Blixen-Finnecke, and he was an incredible horseman. He had won a gold medal in the very first 1952 Olympics in eventing, and he also had trained the dressage horse that won the gold medal. And he was at one time the head of Stromsholm, which is the Swedish military academy. And I mean, what a education! And going from nothing to working with the best people and getting to ride really nice horses. and getting to watch tons of good instruction. So that was, like you call it, what, a corner turner. I mean, just that opportunity. And, it's amazing. It's kind of crazy that it went from no instruction to the best instruction. So that was the beginning. And, after I stopped working for them, I knew enough. I could ride a little bit better. You never know enough. It takes years and years. I knew more about riding young horses. I met a couple trainers. One was Jennifer Roth. I don't remember how I met Jennifer, but she used to bring in Dietrich von Hofgarten. And Dietrich was a protege of Egon von Neindorf. He was German. And so I started to and I had bought my own horse. So I had a really nice horse. And I started to ride with Dietrich. And then that horse had an accident. So I had a little bit of a tendon injury. And and Dietrich always talked about Herr von Neindorf. And I found out you could actually go to Neindorf's to ride. And I decided, because I also had like a terrible accident on a horse where I was riding a horse I didn't know very well. And I did the wrong thing. I pulled on it. I sat back and I pulled on it. It was cantering and it was heavy and I didn't know better. And the horse reared up and I pulled it over. And as I fell, the horse almost landed on top. Well, it did probably land on top of me, but not enough to kill me. And after that, I realized I need to learn better. And I would call it a near-death experience, because I have no idea why I didn't break my back. I fell off the horse and I was laying on the ground and I could still see the horse, big red chestnut, and it fell right. I felt right on top of me, but somehow I didn't die or break my back. But it was a big wake-up call that I needed to ride better, another little push. And long story short, I was able to go to Germany and go study at Egon von Neindorf. It was a school that still might be operating. Herr von Neindorf was still alive, and an American lady named Melissa Sims was actually the head rider. And it was another amazing experience that sent me on another little path of, again, the seat, the getting a better seat, and also being a better horseman. It's very strict. The training was very like military training. They had these wonderful horses, and you were lunged every day. And, I went with two other ladies I didn't know, but in the end, we all became friends. And then later, I actually worked for Melissa Sims, because she lived partly in America and partly in Germany. And that was, just another incredible experience that I still feel. I could still feel Melissa. And actually now I'm connected to one of her students, and Petra studied with Melissa for years, and now I'm working a little bit with Petra. I just had a lesson with Petra. So to keep everything going from what was so correct. And unfortunately, those were the days when Roker started coming into play, and Herr von Neindorf was considered to be one of the greatest masters in Germany. And he was already saying dressage was going to end, correct dressage. And this was in 1996, from the beginning of the Roker, which is that people were pulling the heads in and riding very, very incorrectly. And so, again, I had this opportunity to ride with a great trainer. Melissa is one of the most beautiful riders I'd ever seen. They could do the airs above the ground with the horses on the long reins, like the Spanish riding school. And all the kids on the town, called Crowell's Rule, that would go there after lunch when they were little kids or after school, learned from the lunging. They looked like they were from the Spanish riding school, how they rode. It was gorgeous. and the horses were actually reject horses that the school was given. They reschooled the horses correctly, and the horses lived into their 30s as school horses, but correct from the correct riding. They even did studies on why were these horses still going at 30. So another remarkable experience. When I came back, people said to me, "Oh my God, you ride so much better." And I said, "I just had been on the lunge line the whole time." So after that, I decided to start lunging people, and um, and then I connected with Sandy Howard because I was so interested in rider biomechanics, and she introduced me to Mary Wanless. So I started to incorporate Mary's rider biomechanics with my lunging lessons, because the one flaw that I would say about Neindorf's was they didn't break it down enough in terms of telling people the intricacies of the physics of it and the biomechanics. It was just more getting on the lunge and doing it over and over, but me incorporating what's the fine points that Mary Wanless really figured out. What is good riding? What are the people doing up there? What muscles are they using correctly? What muscles aren't they using? And so I just feel it was, great. I still believe that today, that the fastest way to change is on the lunge line, because you can work on yourself, but you need to know the biomechanics of it. And another thing that, I think you talked about, how did I get involved in rider biomechanics? And
Mm-hmm.
I think, I'm not bragging, but I have a gift of being able to see things much better than
Mm-hmm.
most people. And so when I started to understand from studying with Mary what the correct rider biomechanics, I could see people, very little things I could see, and then I could help them. And if they were willing to go on the lunge, I could do it a lot faster. I could make the changes a lot faster. So I sort of have a gift, and I can see subtle things that a lot of people, other trainers, would be able to see. And so it just all made sense to me. Rider biomechanics. Even before I went to Neindorf's, when I started to work for Jeff and I started to understand a little bit about dressage, I would watch people teaching at his place, and a lot of things they would be saying would be about the horse. And they would say, the horse needs to be more forward, or the horse is being resistant, or the horse, you know, whatever. It was always about the horse. And I would look at it and I would say, no, it's the rider. And I'd say, and I didn't know enough to know what I knew, but I knew that it was the rider that was making the problem for the horse. And maybe they wanted the horse to do something like a leg yield, but the rider was sitting way off in the wrong direction. So the horse was trying to carry a rider that was not helping. So the rider was part of why the horse wasn't going sideways. Or they wanted the horse to go more forward. But I would see, because of this gift that I have, that the rider was sitting against the horse. And I didn't even know. I just knew the horse couldn't go forward because the rider is leaning back or pulling on the rein. And I would kind of go crazy because I would see the rider making the mistake, but people would be talking about the horse. So I think that was my first big aha. It's the
Mm-hmm.
ride, not the horse. And I still believe that to this day. And we can start talking about learning theory and how horses learn. And it is all about the rider and their posture, because the horse knows what we ask through the language of pressure and release. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting ahead of myself. But yeah, I mean, I think because I had this gift that I could see things more than other people, that I saw that it was really so much about the rider. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you knew it, and then you dived in and developed all the tools and the language to be able to talk about it and teach it more effectively.
Well, Mary did a good job on, the physics of how you put the person in the right posture. And that's what was missing at Neuendorf's. The kids have been doing this since they were little, and but they didn't say, to rotate the thigh, or and get, they didn't
Hmm.
break it down enough. But in the end, the kids ended up to be beautiful riders.
Well, and like with horses, there's a big difference between taking a blank canvas and
Hmm.
molding it into something with a program or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
versus taking one that has been ridden poorly, let's say, and like you're not starting from scratch. So it does
Yes.
take a totally different language and skill set and everything when you're taking something that's, in your case, a rider who has already ridden a certain way and now wants to change it. That's not going to be the same as that blank canvas of here's a kid, teach him right the first time. It's just a totally different deal. Different deal.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because actually at Neindorf's they had a saying: 10 years on the lunge line, a little exaggerated, 10 years riding schoolmaster horses under supervision, and then you would be allowed to train horses. Now, in America, no lunging lessons if you had one in your life, but not very many people that had the eye to even tell you what was correct. Very few people got to ride schoolmaster horses unless they were very wealthy, right?
Hmm.
So all of us, most of us, rode green horses without knowing anything. So it's the blind leading the blind, and
Hmm.
we don't have that systematic training of, first, the rider's seat, second, the rider being able to feel what the horse is teaching the rider, and then trying to teach the horse. So it's why there's so many problems with horses and people.
And honestly, I mean, it reminds me of our lessons when you came. You came and we, as I said in your introduction, we scratched the surface of Rider Biomechanics. I am well aware it's so easy to see now looking back at the time.
Yeah,
We couldn't have possibly done a whole lot more on us because of there was just an immense amount of baggage on horse and rider,
yeah,
like our
right.
horses at that time being the way they were from that hunter jumper style were just like heavy and out of balance and the aids didn't work. Like, how many things can we fix at once? I feel like when I look
Yeah.
back and think of our lessons, that's what I think of. There's a lot going on.
I mean, clinics are, I'm not saying clinics are bad. I mean, it's great to get a clinic and help people, but you can't change something in 2 days. You can, like
Hmm.
you say, touch the surface. How much? And I mean, I often will give clinic, and the people, and I try to put the person's, just their body in the right shape in 2 days, much less the riding. And then the person's angry because they didn't get to ride. And yet you're beating your head, because if you let them go on doing what they always did, what are you teaching them? You're not really teaching them. So a clinic situation is not at Neindorf, it was like they said 10 years on the seats. It's kind of
Yeah.
exaggerated, but you can't teach somebody any sport in 2 days.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
definitely a long game thing.
yeah, it definitely is. And really what we need is, so much more education, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Um,
Right. Okay, now, is this a good time to dive into how you first discovered equitation science?
okay. Yes.
Okay.
So I did a lot of rider biomechanics coaching, and I ran into a friend of mine had a young horse that she wanted me to help her with. And this poor horse had been in a field for 5 years, nobody handling him, and he was maybe 9 and barely broke. And I got him from the field and I put him in a round pen, and he was so nervous because he had been left alone. A bird flew by, and the horse literally almost crushed me, jumped into me in the round pen. And I went, oh my God, this is a bit out of my league here. So the owner knew this guy and said, let's use the guy that started the horse. So we brought the guy in, and, he put the saddle on, he tightened the girth really tight, and then he took a flag and he hit the horse as hard as he could. And the poor horse, who was already so nervous and uptight, went into a bucking fit. And the poor thing was careening around and almost falling down. And I thought it was going to break, it was going to fall down and hurt itself. And it was so wrong. And I knew it was so wrong. We never used the guy again. And I knew at that time I needed to get some help about training young horses. I hadn't had a lot of experience with it, besides when I had worked for Jeff. And I remember Allie Wakeland, who was the coach, one of the coaches from Mary Wanless when I was in England studying with Mary, that I talked about Dr. Andrew McLean and equine learning theory. And it just clicked. I'm like, I'm going to get a hold of Allie and I'm going to go to England. And I did. I went to England and I stayed with Allie, and and Mary actually had a course that they were using Dr. McLean's groundwork system. And I took the course, and then I went and worked with Allie a couple of times. I went to England a couple of times and started learning a little bit about learning theory through Allie Wakeland. And then I taught my friend a little bit, and then she said, I want to go to Australia. This is great stuff. And she found out that Andrew and Manuela, this Andrew's wife, were in Canada and British Columbia. So I ended up going to British Columbia. And me and my friend got in, and we did a couple short courses 2 years in a row. And then I started taking the online course, and I got my diploma. It took me a couple years. That horse I was able to train from learning about learning theory. And it sent me on a whole nother path of incorporating equine learning theory and understanding much more about the horse's ethology, their nature, what their needs are. I just have so much more knowledge from taking the course, and I could train the horse. Did train the horse, and it was all from quiet, step by step, break it down to bite-sized bits. Anyway, should I talk a little bit about equitation science?
Yeah, definitely.
So I always knew the seat's important, obviously. And horses made huge leaps and bounds when we sat better on them. But I didn't connect the dots as much as I understand now, because now I understand about operant conditioning and classical conditioning. And operant conditioning, and everybody would say, horses learn from release of pressure. But I didn't really understand it until I really started to work with horses, how much they get the release. And it's not the pressure. So when we teach a horse something, they trial and error. We ask them something. Let's say we're working with them in hand, and we ask the horse to take a step back from pressure, from the bit pressure. Often they don't know what that means. And I'm talking about a very green horse, not something horse already knows. So, and most people work on very high pressure. They work on a 5 or 6 pressure. But when you want a horse to step back on a 1 or 2 pressure, most horses don't, because people use too high pressure. So then Andrew uses a technique called whip tapping, where you just tap the horse, and you can tap it on the chest, you can tap it on the cannon bone. And the horse might trial pick the leg up, it might trial step forward, it might trial go to the side. And when it does one step of the correct step back, you release. And that's called negative reinforcement. And it doesn't mean bad, it means take away, remove pressure. We train all the horses, whether it's the step back or the stop or the go or the displacement of the shoulders or the moving of the hind legs. Those are the 4 operants that we train. And all horses, especially when we add positive reinforcement, which is when they do the right response, the step back, we also can reward the horse with a cookie or a rub at the base of the neck, which they quite enjoy. That's called positive. So through negative, or take away pressure, and positive, give them something, combined reinforcement, That's how we train horses, pretty much. And you
Hmm.
can use different techniques. There's people who use flags, you know, and we also use our voice, and we also use our seat, and they also follow our feet, and that's classical conditioning. So operant conditioning, the four operants, and I can break down the stop and the go, and Andrew's broken this down. So the one operant of stop can be broken down to stepping back, to going slower, that's the speed or tempo, and going shorter, that's the stride length. The go can be broken down to going up a gait, to be going faster, to be going a longer step. And then displacing the shoulders, that's the turning aid, and then the crossing of the hind legs. And those four operants, you can train any horse to do anything with those operants. And when you understand what operant you're working with, and people might say to you in a riding lesson, ride the horse more forward. Well, do you mean longer? Do you mean faster?
Hmm.
Do you mean go up a gate? And when you really understand how precise we could be with horses, and how clear and how subtle our aids can be, and how we have to have such good posture to be able to put the precise cue we want and the immediately release when they do the right thing. And that's why
Hmm.
the posture has to be so impeccable. Because if we're sitting crooked or we're using our leg too much, they will habituate to that. And then we say the horse is dull to our leg aid, but it's not being dull. It's habituated to too much pressure with no release. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yep, it's been desensitized at that point.
Exactly, exactly. And
So I think when you describe all of that, I know that the detail and the magic of it is in that precision and how small and light and how small the changes are.
yes,
But when you describe it, it's very easy, I think, to take those words and in a brain that hasn't seen it in action. I
hmm,
have, but
yeah,
if someone hasn't, let's say they're just listening and they
right.
hear those words and like, okay, yeah, perfect. I can teach my horse a really good, clean stop, go, sideways,
Mhm.
bam, done. It's not that easy. There's a
Well,
lot to it.
you hit the nail on the head. It's extremely easy to give blurry signals. It's extremely easy for the human to get muddled. It's not so easy to be very precise. The great riders, they say they have feel and timing, and that's what they're doing. They're giving precise signals that the horse ideally understands. Now, the horse might not know what the pressure means, and it might trial, like say you ask a horse to go sideways and it goes forward or whatever. And then you get upset because it's not doing the right thing. So you might stop it, but then you might kick it. But then, how people get confused themselves. I mean, we've all done it. And then the horse doesn't know. But the horse is trialing a behavior, but the rider thinks the horse is trying to do something it doesn't want. So you see how confusing it can get for horses.
Mhm.
It's not so precise, and that's why we really, the more we're educated and the more we are clear what we're asking, and the more we have to break only one cue at one time. We can't ask three things at once. And just think about how confusing it is for a horse, because sometimes the leg means go, but sometimes the leg means move sideways, but sometimes, or the rein pressures. Sometimes people use the rein pressures, unfortunately, to put the head down. That's not good, because sometimes we want the rein pressures to mean to slow down or move the shoulders. So it can get very blurry, and it's tough for horses, and it's tough for humans. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who haven't started to go down the rabbit holes of this kind of writing and this level of communication,
Yeah.
um, I know I would have said years ago, when it was very different than it is now, I would have said well, I'm being light. It's all relative,
Yeah,
it's definitely
exactly.
all relative in an evolution of what light means and what soft
Mhm.
means and what precise means. But I do think that something that's interesting for people to think about if they don't already is when we're talking about a light cue or a light aid. I mean, think about when we have a tiniest little pebble in our shoe. It could be the smallest thing and it feels so dramatic. I think we
Exactly.
have to keep that in our mind when we're cueing our horses, and a lot of people are not. Like their version of light or small would be, if we compare my little analogies here, it would be a rock this big in your shoe, the way that they're
Oh no.
talking to their horses. Um, and so I think that's like the journey that a lot of people need to go on. And then once you go on it, then you find, oh my gosh, there's this vast journey over here of how you can get even lighter and even more precise. It just goes on forever.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's a great point because it's amazing how most people ride on very high pressure. They're
Mhm.
not knowing they're doing it. So if we know a horse can feel a fly, a touch, and it twitches from a fly, we know it can be sensitive from barely the touch of the leg. And I think it's much easier to get a horse to react to the leg as long as you don't interfere in the mouth. But horses often react to the bit in a way where I think it's harder to get through to them because they can duck their heads in, they could, and it's hard for us, I think, to have the ability to use the bit in a way that's not a pulling action. I think it's very hard. Even,
I think, tell me what you think on this. I feel like horses are so much more likely to feel defensive, and rightly so, from a bit,
I agree.
even if you haven't done anything wrong yet. I
I,
mean,
I,
fair enough, it's in their mouth compared to us
right,
touching
right.
them on their body. It just makes sense how sensitive that would be. We
No,
would be too.
and Andrew, it's interesting about Andrew. He did a study on all, he used to have Australian Equine Behavior Center for about 20 years, him and his wife. And basically, the kids ran a facility where they brought in horses that had problems, conflict behavior, and they reschooled them. And Andrew did his PhD studying what was a basic commonality on all these horses that had bucking, rearing, bolting, spooking, behavioral problems. And on both ends of the spectrum, the go and the whoa were very deficient. They often, both horses, even horses that reared, you would think, oh, a lack of go, or horses that bucked, they all didn't stop and go. But he felt it was hard for horses to often not probably feel the pain in the mouth with the bit pressures. Now, I've ridden horses bitless, and to me, I don't really like it that much. It just, I don't know. It just never worked for me. I like the feel, but you have to be very, very precise and very determined to relax in your arms. So you have to have an amazing seat. I'm not saying I have an amazing seat, but you have to have quite a good seat to be able to, I think, give the bit pressure in a very slight way and a big release. It's very hard.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, people ride with gadgets and horrible things with the bit. So, I mean, we don't want to get in that bad part, but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you one of the questions, and we'll just see where it takes us.
Uh-huh.
And that is, as riders, we have to interpret how our horses feel mentally and physically. What are some ways that horses tell you what they need?
Are you talking about under saddle or just being around horses in general?
I would say in general, you can choose to answer
Yes.
that however you want, because I think there's a lot to say in either department, really. So
Yeah, yeah.
you go with it however you'd like.
Well, if you know the horse well, you can determine its mood or what it's feeling, even when you're taking it from your paddock to saddling it up. If it's a little spooky and staring at something, that's a little bit of a heads up. And when it's normally just relaxed and walking out. Um, Obviously, if the breathing is higher and the tail is tight and the horse just doesn't look comfortable and the pressure's high to lead it, or it doesn't have a good stop, or its ears are looking, that's a sign of tension or maybe discomfort. I mean, obviously, if the horse isn't walking correctly, you might look and see if it's lame. Um, and if the horse is off its feed right away, that's something we should notice. If the horse isn't eating, these are things that we should always be aware of, even before we, go to ride it. If it's been running in the paddock and it looks like, why is it running in the paddock? If it's winning to other horses, these are things I would notice right away of tension. And, or if it's a day that it's just uptight, you can't figure out why, but you can tell the horse isn't really connected to you. It's much more connected to the environment or other horses. Those are signs of heads up. When you go to put the saddle on, if the horse, you tighten the girth and the horse is uncomfortable, that's not a good sign. The horse can't stand still. It's edgy. These are all things I would notice before I'd ever even want to put my body on the horse. And I always work the horse in hand before I get on the horse, just to see if it's tight. I mean, if it looks uncomfortable, if it's moving freely, is it lower its neck? Is its head up in the air? Its ears looking? You can look at the ears. You can look at the tail. You can look at the breathing. You can look at the nose, the face, the mouth. These are all, for me, signs of tension. So, yeah, I just try to notice everything like that. You feel a connection, especially if even if you don't know the horse. I remember leading a horse that I didn't know very well. I was in a clinic, and the horse was very tight and very funny and reactive when we led it up to the riding ring, and we weren't allowed to lunge it. And I already had instincts there's something not right with this horse. Sure enough, the other rider, too, we rode in pairs. The other rider got on, and I told the lady just walk quietly, but somebody else told it, oh, make the horse more forward, and it took off bucking. And I already had a sense there was something wrong with the horse. Later, the horse colicked. So I had good instincts. I mean, if you pay attention, you can be pretty perceptive about what horse you have with you. And I didn't even know that horse at all. I'd never seen it before in my life. So I think everybody should pay attention to these signs. And I always like to lunge a few minutes before I ride, just to see if the horse is sound,
Yeah.
it's moving, is it comfortable. You might be surprised. It might be much higher than you think, and a little soft lunging, let it move, let it relax. Much better than when you get on. Or I always spend a lot of time walking before I actually ask the horse to trot. And you can tell a lot. If the horse is on high pressure, if you're leading the horse and you ask it to stop, I also do a lot of transitions when I'm leading a horse. And if I ask it to stop and it's on high pressure, that's not a good sign. I ask it to walk off, it's on, doesn't go, that's not a good sign. So these are what I notice. Yeah.
And so when it's not a good sign,
Yeah.
would you say that then, because you have this language of very clear aids, you can bring the horse back to you in that case through this specific conversation?
Yes.
Would you say that's how you kind of implement the tool of what you learned with
Absolutely.
equitation science?
Absolutely. I would work the horse in
Okay.
hand, and I always do all the operants. And I would also park the horse and make it, have it just stand and chill out, watch it. And and like I say, then I lunge it, but I don't rush it around. It's not a lunging where you chase a horse around. It's transition work. It's again operant conditioning, basically moving. And if the horse doesn't settle, I wouldn't ride it. I don't I
Hmm.
don't ride tight horses, uptight horses. And sometimes
Hmm.
I get on and immediately I feel this horse is on high pressure. It's uptight. I might get off. There's no reason.
Yeah.
There's no, people say they had accidents on horses, And I say a lot of those times, what's called an accident could have been avoided with somebody just saying, "This is not a day to ride." I don't know what's
Hmm.
going on, but, you know, and we generally don't need to ride if we don't need to, you know what I mean? It's not like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
not like they're,
At this point, I would say I enjoy groundwork so much that, whatever, I can do
yeah,
so
yeah,
many fun things on the ground, it doesn't matter to me. Um, it's hard to imagine when people don't want to do groundwork or they think that I'm doing it and that it's a chore. I'm like, no, this is great. We're talking, I'm talking to the body, we're talking to each other, everything's great.
yeah, and so much you're so happy you'd spent that extra 10 minutes because you had, I'm amazed. The horse I ride, 4 times a week. I'm amazed. She looks very calm, and then all of a sudden she's not. And but she, I don't let her buck ever run, but she settles and relaxes and has a little canter. And then if she's tight, her muscles relax, and then I feel it's good to get on. I mean, that's how I look at it.
Okay. Can you define what horsemanship means to you, or what does good horsemanship look like to you, if that's an easier way to describe it?
Well, I think we kind of covered it in the previous question in terms of really noticing what's in front of you, noticing, everything about the horse that you know, or even a horse you don't know, really paying attention. And then, of course, taking good care of the horse, having the horse living in a place where ideally it can touch other horses. It's big enough where the horse has a lot of space to move around. If unfortunately it's not big enough, at least turn out every day. I mean, we can't graze in California. I don't know about Arizona. There's no grass, so we can't have horses out on the grass. But, if you can have horses go out together, that's ideal. Um, Educating yourself, understanding things about horses, knowing that they're prey animals, that they lived in the wild. They have the largest amygdala of any domesticated animals. They have huge flight response. Knowing their ethology, knowing their needs, good shoeing, or barefoot trimming, whatever. If it works to have the horse barefoot, it's fine, either way. But very good, care of the feet, no horse. Saddles must fit. If the saddle is pinching the withers or the shoulder, the horse can't function, it might be in pain. That's hugely important. Good vet care, you know, body work if you can afford it, chiropractics, whatever your beliefs are that the horse needs, you know. I don't know, some people do all kinds of, there's all kinds of modalities that are good for horses. And just being educated, if there's a problem with the horse, find somebody that can help you. That's good horsemanship. Don't go it alone.
Yeah, and Erica, I will say you have always very much been very obviously an eternal student, and
I
not
am.
just of horses, I would say like of life.
Yeah, I am.
Um, you, so I am sure that's why you are so great with horses, because when you hear your story, it's easy to see you've been learning stuff for your whole life, and obviously you have no intention of stopping, which is amazing.
I always want to learn more. I mean, if I had more resources, I'd have more learning to travel and go because there's not you can there's no lifetime you'll learn. There's so many people out there that know more than you know or know something more than you know about a certain thing. And life is just a constant education. It's wonderful. And I'd love to have somebody give me an eye that I trust because yeah, being a good horseman is being humble. Is being, you know, knowing that you could learn more, I guess, would be another thing I'd say. Yeah.
Mhm. There's a lot of people that stay passionate for like a chunk of time, and you are like eternally passionate, so there's something about you with that.
Yeah, I love it. I love sharing and I love seeing people change and ride better and treat their horses better and get more education. I think that if there were more people that were that inspired, that the horse business, the horse world, the horses would be much better off.
That's for sure. So, what are you studying these days? And in what ways are you excelling? And what would you like to improve upon? And that could be a in the saddle answer or out of the saddle, whatever you want.
I would not say I'm excelling at anything. Um, the only thing that I would say about me that I have excelled at is been a gift that I was given, meaning that I can see things much clearer than other people can. In terms of watching somebody's body on a horse, I can see the mechanics of it. So I excel at that. But where I've gotten better is understanding more how to tell them what they're doing and how to do it in a more correct way. And also, I understand more the causal relationship between what's happening with the human on the horse and the horse's reactions to it. And now that I understand how horses learn, I have even a bigger picture of the why things happen and maybe the ways in to change things. So I could say maybe I'm like, I don't know, like that word excelling, but getting better at. And the thing about horses, it's always a puzzle of why they react a certain way. There's so much more than just the person isn't sitting that correctly. There's so many other factors, and I think I'm much more humble maybe about the not knowing part and trying to figure things out instead of this is the way it is and this is the way it has to be. And I think that's that internal searching for the truth in me that makes me more humble about maybe I'm on the wrong track or I am on the right track, or I have to explore things more, I have to find out more from other people. And I think we all should have a little bit of that curiosity about what makes things tick and how things can get better for the horses if we're going to ride them. So that's my excelling part. Non-excelling of my excelling. I'm an aspiring non-exceller, but
Tell us about any of your other sports activities, whatever you call them. Do you want to fill us in on any of that, or
I think it'd be fun because I'm a skier, and I've been taking a lot of ski lessons the last 3 or 4 years, and I wasn't getting better. They were group lessons. I did take one lesson, and the person told me just to do 2 drills, and I just never skied with anybody else. I just did these 2 drills. I did 6 hours sometimes a day just doing 2 specific drills. And my whole skiing turned around, and I was able to completely change the ability to be able to put the skis on edge and carve within 10 ski days. And I had taken like 3 years of taking group lessons and getting different input or no input in a group. So what I really got out of that is you can do a lot of improving by sticking with one problem, one piece of the equation, and just changing it.
And it sounds like in that case, getting that piece of information that was specific to you, like you got your little prescription of here, do this that fit you, and then you could go so far with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the biggest problems with skiers is we get intimidated by the mountain because it's steep, so we lean into the mountain. Whereas you need to lean over as if because you're on a slope, you'll be relative to the slope in a good position and get more weight. They call it on the downhill ski. It's the same in riding. When we're scared, we tip forward. Well, where we should be is more anchored in the saddle if the horse were to take off or whatever. We do the opposite. It's a fear response. And so they have a couple of drills to help you get more upper body down the hill. And I was able to just do that. Then your body kind of figures out, oh, it's safer to have that posture, not the other one, or whatever. And I think with people with riding, it's much more you're much more effective when you sit in the correct way than when you do the tip forward or pull or things like that.
Yeah, and I love how you said that it's like you have to like teach your mind or teach your nervous system like this really is the strongest or the most balanced or whatever. It has its own ideas, but they're not always accurate.
Right, and it's interesting getting back to kind of the learning of a skill. What I got and relating it to riding is if you teach somebody one thing, there's only a few people that are interested in really doing that one thing until they get better at it. And they stick around. I don't have a ton of people that are interested. Maybe 10%. If you took 10 people, maybe 1 out of 10. And I also did karate, and I saw it in the karate training when our sensei would break things down instead of people want to think it's some kind of fighting thing. But when you break things down, that's what makes the beautiful martial artist. And you can take one movement, one little series of movements, and spend an hour or two at them. And I think that might be more why we don't have a lot of beautiful riding, because the coaching doesn't do it. They don't break it down. People want to go off and do things badly, and they think it's more fun, but they're not thinking about what the horse feels. Like if you're doing a sport like tennis or skiing, you're the guy that's going to pay the price. You'll get the tennis elbow if you don't hit correctly. You'll fall down the hill if you lean into the hill. And then you either learn or you don't. But with horses, we don't know what they're feeling. We don't know if every time we're doing a certain thing, we're pulling the head in or pulling the hand down, and we think we want to do our shoulder in again 20 times. And the horses making grinding noises and nobody's noticing, and I've seen it. I see it, and when I watch other people training, I don't know, there's just this huge disconnect between the fact that we can't feel what they're feeling, and we're not noticing the signs that things aren't really, they're not happy with what we're doing. But anyway, I'm just jumping around kind of thinking about that.
That disconnect you talk about, I find so interesting um, because it's like a lot of the people that I would say are disconnected from how their horse feels about the riding or the work or the training or whatever it is they're doing. A lot of them would genuinely say they are connected and they do know their horse and you know I think that's what makes it so challenging changing anything with with some circles, is they already think they're doing great and everybody is doing their best, but it's like, man, your horse is suffering and they don't see it that way, so that's a tough place to be. When you see it, you see it, and when you don't, you don't.
Well, not enough of the coaches. Either they notice it and they don't care because they want to keep their clients happy, or they don't notice it. Maybe they think it's totally fine. But I've actually seen a few abusive things lately in clinics where the horse was obviously in pain. The riders rode through it, meaning they were strong enough to, I'll call it bullying the horse to go from a trot to the canter, although the horse was pretty violently saying, I can't do this, it hurts. And what I felt, I didn't think it was just, I don't want to do it because, I'm scared or don't understand. And then the coaching went, good job, you, well done, you really told that horse a thing or two. Well, and that's so wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong on every end. It's wrong on it, not acknowledging. It's wrong on not telling the person to stop. It's wrong on giving the person kudos for doing it wrong and winning. It's all wrong, and I just see that too much in our sport. Over facing horses and jumping, and then the horse acts out or bucks the person off, or just crashes and burns and gets hurt.
And I think that often goes back to what you said earlier with people want to go out and do stuff And there's coaches out there. I mean, at this point, there's generations of coaches who come from that, like, yeah, we go do stuff. And that's where our gratification comes from. It's like their only way of even tracking their progress, is going to the horse show. And so it's a big cycle.
And also, there's not enough in the judging that's saying when you hear a lot of teeth grinding or things questioning, is this horse feeling okay? Maybe they should come over and have a look at it, or telling them this isn't acceptable. Sorry, we're going to not give you a score. We'll give you a 3.
Yeah.
Teeth grinding, or something like that. The other thing that I was just thinking as we've been doing this podcast is how little the coaching comes together in a cohesive way. Other coaches are afraid to bring in other coaches' opinions, or even bring in other coaches, even though they don't have the skill the other coach has, because there's a fear that they might not be thought of highly enough with their clients, or, whereas I just had my mare, an older mare, just had a colic, and I had 3 different vets on the whole 3 days of basically trying to solve the problem of why she colicked and how to keep her alive, and they did a really good job. 3 different opinions, all cohesive, working as a team. We don't have enough of that in the horse world. There's often coaches that will not let their riders ever have another opinion. They'll fire them unless they bring that person in. So I think that's another problem in the horse business. Everybody's doesn't want another opinion unless it agrees with their specific opinion, or there's just not enough honesty. Anyway, another opinion I've been thinking about.
Yeah, it's that open-mindedness. It's like there's and hopefully that's something that is shifting in the culture. I don't know if it really is or not, but hopefully a little bit more open-mindedness in that eternal student thing,
I have not seen that in my life. More openness.
No.
I've seen more closeness. It's a business. It's a business. It's the problem with the horse business is that it is a business, and because it's a business, everybody, and there's a limited source of income in a lot of places, so everybody is worried, that they can survive. Whereas if you think about the military, always subsidized everybody, and they could have tons of experts coming together because they all work for the same guy, the king or queen, if it was a queen. And that is not happening.
Yeah. Well, hopefully podcasts like these can keep bringing people together to talk and listen and do stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about corner turners. I know we have mentioned them a little bit already, but corner turners are people, horses, or events that change our trajectory and define who we are. So, I know you have some impactful corner turners, Erica. Do you want to tell us about some of them?
Well, that could be a lot of time, but I'll go through them because I'd like to acknowledge them.
Yeah, definitely.
My first corner turner might be even me reading Podhajsky's book, My Horse is My Teacher, so that I could call that a corner turner because it got me on the path of wanting to become beautiful on a horse and have the horse look like the riders in the Spanish riding school. So that was a big corner turner. And then the very first people that I rode with on Maui with Jeff Moore and Liz Cyril, and then they invited me to come and work for them, and that was a huge corner turner. And I trained with them for a couple years. Well, I lived there about a year and a half, and I got to ride young horses and learn amazing stuff from them. They were very into education, and they brought over people from Europe And then they brought over the Baron von Blixen, who was a huge corner turner for Jeff, because he was now exposed to a different systematic way of riding, which was much lighter approach than the more Germanic approach, which was trained for more heavier horses, and we're riding lighter horses, thoroughbreds, and also just a different style of riding that really resonated with Jeff, because he was looking for a different way. He was at that point competing, and so the Baron was, although I didn't understand half the things he said, now I do, but it's been many years to understand what he was talking about. He was actually a great eye on the seat and position, and said a lot of things later that I learned that Mary Wanless said. And so he was way beyond his years, and the way he rode horses was very biomechanically correct, and he was already into the language of touch, learning theory. So he was very evolved being, and so he was a great corner turner and a wonderful person. And then later exposed from Jennifer Roth, I'll call her a corner turner because she loved the Spanish riding school so much. And she used to bring in Dietrich von Hofgarten. And Dietrich was a real proponent of the seat and position. And whenever you struggled with the horse, he would say, you need to get on the lunge line. You need to work on your seat. And he had been a student of Herr von Neindorf. And so then after a major corner turner where I had that horrible near-death experience when I pulled the horse over on top of me, I went to Neindorf's because of Dietrich talking about Herr von Neindorf, and I got to experience, very traditional correct training. And my coach was Melissa Sims, and she was the head rider at Neindorf. She was an American. And I rode one time with Herr von Neindorf, but I don't speak German, so I didn't understand him very well. But he was pretty terrifying. And just being around the German system and how strict everything was, and how at Neindorf's one time Melissa told me to get off the horse, and I said, why? Because you're too emotional. I mean, that's how strict the training was. You cannot ride when you're emotional. You have to be... everything was about the horse, the care of the horse, and also the seat has to be impeccable. And no whining, no, I can't, if you don't like it, you can leave. It's not about the humans, it was about the horses. So that was, and a little bit, my training is a little bit like that. So that's a corner turner. Also, I have to give a corner turner to my sensei that I trained with for 25 years as a martial artist. And he taught me many, many things about training, so I'll call him a corner turner. Terry Dunphy, he was my sensei, and, to instill discipline, and again, just you do what you're told, and you have gratitude and humility and that kind of thing. So he's a corner turner. And then I met Sandy Howard, and I liked a lot her training, and she was very kind to me, and she turned me on to Mary Wanless, who was, as you well know, one of the most influential people of our generation to really break down what the biomechanics are with the rider and how to find those biomechanics. And I think the how-to is the most important thing. And she didn't use the technique of lunging like they did at Neindorf's, but she did it through just explaining the muscles and which muscles you use and how to engage your core. And she's written so many books, and she comes to America, and she's a corner turner of her systematic approach to the rider biomechanics. And then on my last corner turners was going back to England and working with Ali Wakeland with the groundwork of operant conditioning that she learned from Manuela and Andrew and Warwick McLean, and then getting enthralled with learning more about learning theory and how horses learn, and then studying with Manu and Andrew, and getting a degree in equitation science, and now trying to add that that layer of how horses learn, how we can properly communicate with them, and more the why of their behavior, their telos, how they're hardwired, understanding, how they are in nature, so that we can really give them the life they deserve and also understand how to communicate better with them. So that's all my corner turners. A lot of corner turners.
It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I love learning. I think I love being a student more than, I love being a teacher, but I love being a student so much.
Yeah. Now, I know recently you taught a clinic. It was a multi-day clinic where you were able to combine um, your Rider Biomechanics work with some of the equitation science work over several days. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that clinic?
Yes, I did this once with another friend. We do work together and it really went well, so I thought I'd try it by myself. And instead of having like a usual clinic where you have 8 people and you give each person a 45-minute lesson, there's just so much to explain. And I thought if I could incorporate how horses learn, then they might be also more inclined to understand why their seat has to be so precise. So there were only 4 people instead of 8. And each person got to have 2-hour lessons, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And in the morning, they got to learn how horses learn through doing this groundwork system that Dr. Andrew McLean has devised that I think is so precise. So there's 4 operants. You teach the horses the stop. We talked about earlier, the go, the displacement of the shoulders, and the moving of the hind legs. And so it looks easy. When I do the groundwork, it looks very easy. You do use a system called whip tapping. So when you ask the horse to move, let's say step back, use bit pressure, or it can be a halter. It doesn't have to be a bridle and a bit. And you ask the horse to make a little pressure, and the whole goal is to get the horse to be on light pressure. And I think most people don't understand how light pressure is. Remember, a horse responds to a touch of a fly. And so a horse is very sensitive. And humans are always battering the horse around on about a 6 to 8 pressure. And they can feel a fly, they can be on a 0 to 1, 2 pressure. So I teach the riders how to get the horses to take a step back and then later take several steps back on a 1 to 2 pressure. And each horse is different. Some horses are extremely sensitive and get it very quickly. Some horses are very motivated. So what the riders really learned is how quickly they learn from the release of the pressure. They don't learn from the pressure. They learn from the release. And they trial different things. They trial go sideways. They trial go forward. They trial stand still. And it's okay. They're allowed to trial. We learn through trial and error too. Operant conditioning was how we learn. And I think people don't get it when they ask the horse a question and the horse trials the wrong behavior. They think the horse is being naughty, or it's being dumb, or it's lazy, or it doesn't want to do it. We put all these human terms on the horse, where in fact the horse is actually trying to figure out what we want. And I think that's the biggest thing that I was hoping people would get, that it's okay for the horse to do the wrong thing in trial, as long as it's not something dangerous. And it learns from the release of the pressure. And that's through what we call negative reinforcement. Now, some horses are highly motivated by food. And I had this little Icelandic horse that I've been working with, and she learned from the release, but man, was she on board the minute I gave her a tiny cookie. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. If the horse is on board, why not? I've never been bitten by ever doing positive reinforcement and giving a horse a cookie. I've never been bitten. And I've worked with a ton of horses. So people have this idea you must never give the horse a treat, and I don't agree with that. I don't have a problem. But anyway, that was the idea, why in the morning they could learn about operant conditioning and also classical conditioning, get an idea of what it really is, how the horses learn, how sensitive they are, how they trial, they give us different responses until they figure out the right one. And then take it to the afternoon session was the work on the seat, and then doing operant conditioning under saddle. I think it's a great clinic to do something like that. We got a lot of good feedback. If I'm teaching a one-on-one lesson, that's how I operate now. I try to incorporate both. It's funny, people have their beliefs, and some people have a belief that we have to dominate the horse, that we have to be the leader, that horses have to respect us. I don't want to say bullying, but too rough. Horses don't learn like that. They learn from release of pressure and positive reinforcement. They don't respect me. I'm there, I respect her. No, first of all, they'd really like a cookie, and they don't really like the leg on their side, so they would like that to go away too. I mean, so I don't know. I'm just in my small way trying to do what I know is how they learn. If more people knew that, I just think horses would have better lives. Playing my little part in the role of lives of a few horses and people.
Do you think that, we've obviously talked about how there is a large group of people that are just operating from our perspective, maybe we would say too rough, or like you, I think, said maybe a 6 or 8 on the pressure scale, and we would hope to get much lower. Do you also think that there is a problem with kind of like the over emotionalizing horses in the training?
Well, if you mean over emotionalizing, what I think is we get involved in our egos on how the horse acts. Like there's often we're riding, and if, oh my God, the horse isn't on the bit, somebody's going to watch, and that means I'm not a good rider, and that means I'm not a good person, and that means I better get this horse's head down really quick, so I better fiddle because people are watching me. I'm just exaggerating, but maybe not that much.
Mm-hmm.
There's a performance anxiety, especially in big barns. Mm-hmm. Or even if you think your trainer's watching and, oh my God, my trainer's watching and this horse doesn't look like it should when I'm riding my lesson, I bet, whereas if you're skiing and you don't do well, you fall down. Oh, well, you get back up again. You're not hurting anybody. But I think that's where, if that's what you mean by over emotional, we're doing a sport on a horse. That's what most people are doing. Some just dabble and go on trail rides. But most people want to go out and compete, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's good fun. I did some jumping. I did an event. Super fun. But that's where people get over emotional or I'd call it more egotistical, what I'm talking about. Maybe not what you were talking about. People get egotistical. People's self-esteem is caught up in their horse's performance. Whereas if you want to do a sport, if you want to take up boxing, like I've decided to take up boxing just for fun, and if I went out and got punched in the head, that's my problem because I'm not very good at it or whatever, you see. But, if you make horses do things and they're not ready for it or they don't understand or something goes wrong, then people, I think, get over emotional because of their ego.
When I would say over emotional, that would be the one side of the spectrum. And on the other side of the spectrum, which I've come across in this equine welfare passion, I guess you could say, is this other side that is people get so lost in their horse's emotions and, oh, I can't upset them, or, oh, they can't have any anxiety. And that's the other side of the spectrum of overly emotional, and then they just become unclear because they're trying so hard to not upset them and be soft and whisper and all this stuff, and now the horse has no idea what's going on. So that would be my version of the other side.
Right, and then you'd have a horse that might plow over somebody and just walk right through them and knock them in the head or something. No, I mean, there has to be rules. Horses are huge. They're wired for flight. They have the largest amygdala, which regulates fear. of any domesticated animal. Also, they have their desires that might not be, they want to go eat the grass, they might rip your shoulder. No, we have to, they're big, like you have a big dog, you can't let it jump on top of you, even though you love it to death. There has to be rules and regulations for safety alone. When you're sitting on an animal that weighs 1,500 pounds and has a huge flight response, you better have good brakes, and steering. So that other end of the spectrum is also, I almost want to call it stupidity. And that's where there's a lot of accidents with horses. That's why we should all, and I really suggest this, read Dr. McLean's, buy his latest books, Modern Horse Training, and understand the horses, how they're wired, how they're hardwired, how their brains functions, what you need to know about them, how to habituate them, desensitize them as much as make them sensitive. The more you know about the animal you're hanging out with, the more you'll be able to be safe.
And kind. Safe and kind.
Exactly. Safe and kind. Exactly.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Safe and kind. That's really important because there are more horse accidents. It's the most dangerous of all the sports except maybe motorcycle riding, but they're right up there together. I mean, more horse accidents for people and horses. That's why. So, yeah, the other end of the spectrum is just as bad in terms of safety and everything as the other end where the roughness. Yeah. So.
Right. Well, let's move on over to our most important question. And that is, if your fairy godmother granted you 3 wishes, what would you wish for? Could be absolutely anything.
Okay, well, first one would be a cure for ALS. My very, very good friend has ALS, and it's a horrible disease where there's no cure at this point. It's so debilitating. So anyway, that's my first wish, if there could be a cure for her right now, at this moment in time. I would like, the second wish would be education, like academies, that we could have some wealthy types that would set up in areas in America and other countries too, where people could go and train with very, very correct trainers and learn about learning theory, the whole enchilada, Rider Biomechanics, what a correct horse, how it should go biomechanically, just education, not just for children, and also for kids that can't afford it, some kind of programs where they could come in. And I don't think people should be given anything for free, for nothing, because they don't value it. I think everybody, matter of fact, the people that go to this school should pitch in on taking care of the horses, picking up after the horses. But it could be a place and where trainers could go. And then there'd be a place that trainers and great teachers could come and make some money, and so that they would work there. Maybe they'd have their own clientele. They could come and work there, and you could go and they would create exhibitions and show really correct training, and it could also help people come, like Spanish riding school. People would come and watch correct training, beautiful riding, inspire other beautiful riding, and then we could have a network of trainers and coaches and specialists like me, and communities, and also talking about how horses should be living. I don't know, that's like a dream. And a third one, I don't know, I could be selfish and with my desire to learn, have a coach in every sport that I loved, a private coaching, and be able to go skiing with my ski coach, and then have a boxing coach, and have my seat coach, and have my horse training coach, and be able to ride more schooled horses and keep learning and growing so I could be a better coach. Because I think when you get coached, you pick up better coaching from other coaches and their style, and then you understand how to deal with that person and that horse. Just overall learn more. That would be a wish, to be able to still have the resources to be able to go to Europe or go to wherever, South America, and travel and meet other great coaches. That's what I'd want.
And specialize in everything. I love it.
Yeah, why not? Well,
That
biomechanics
sounds
is
great.
biomechanics, so it's so interesting because from martial arts training, because I did that for 25 years till my sensei retired, um, the stances, the stance and the posture and the breathing and how you use your body is all about the same in riding. Because riding originally was a martial art, basically. It was for warfare. So now it's
Very cool.
different kind of warfare.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really appreciate your time, Erica. This has been a lot of fun. We may have to do it again. You have a wealth of knowledge on so many subjects.
Can I throw in one thing? I just have this quotes from Dr. McLean that I would like to talk about a little bit. Is that okay to throw that in?
Definitely.
Okay, so here's a quote. If we use animals for sport, we have to do it in a way that takes their best interest into account, not just our own pockets. That's one quote. The future of equestrian sports depends on the will and the courage of the people within the industry. That's all of us. There's a growing desire from animal rights organizations to stop horses in the Olympics. And there's a lot of problems with the way horses, especially in modern dressage, are being ridden now behind the vertical. And so one of the things that we know, and this is from Andrew McLean, is that when horses are ridden behind the vertical, there's an increasing amount of air deprivation. And when the gullet is closed and the horse is behind the vertical or has even a short neck, like show jumpers, the horse suffers air deprivation of up to 15%. That would be similar to somebody with a mild asthma attack. And so that's happening now in the upper level competition. And luckily, Dr. McLean is now on the board of the FEI. So maybe
Saw that. Mm-hmm.
that's going to change. But it's something for every rider out there to consider. Horses will go behind vertical. They do that. But if we understand that and we help them not go in that posture, and we definitely don't cause it, that's really important. And the other thing is that we have to understand science. We have to break old narratives. And we have to concerned in breaking these old narratives, how horses are trained now, which should be much more modern. Not just because everybody did it, we have to continue to do it. We just have to have more education and more understanding of welfare. And when we don't understand, go to experts. So that's my big pitch. Find good experts, not your local so-and-so who thinks they know it all type thing person. Yes. Go to real authorities. Don't go on the internet. No, you can go on the internet, but make sure the information that you're listening to is from a real expert. Okay, that's my ending.
Love it. Well, those were great. Well, where can people find you and follow along? And are you still traveling for clinics if people are interested in doing that?
Yes, I'm definitely still working and traveling if I have a clinic, and I really like it. I'd love to do that format I did, but I'm happy just to do a Rider Biomechanics clinic or just to do a equitation science type of clinic, either one. Especially learning the groundwork of Dr. McLean. It's such a, and then, helping somebody do it under saddle, but you really do have to have good rider biomechanics. And it doesn't mean you have to be a dressage rider, just anybody in any kind of saddle needs to sit in a way that the horse can understand the pressures and mainly, again, the releases. So people can get a hold of me through my website, gotseat.com, like got milk, got seat. And then on my website's my phone number, and Erica@gotseat.com is my email.
All right.
Excellent. Happy to travel and do a clinic.
Right. Well, this was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit TamerleeBarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.